A mechanic faced humiliation in his own shop, ridiculed by a customer who spat, "Get me a real mechanic, not you." He remained silent, merely nodding, allowing the man to parade out, convinced of his victory. However, when that same man's SUV broke, down on a lonely road amidst a fierce storm, it was this mechanic who arrived, repaired it at no cost in the relentless rain, and left him astonished upon discovering that the man he had overlooked was a former genius from General Motors. That moment didn't merely restart an engine. It dismantled prejudice and transformed a town, in Fairview, Tennessee, where pickup trucks thunder more fiercely than church bells, and the aroma of Miss Lorraine's diner coffee wafts through every street. Marcus Tate was the soul of the community. Tate's Auto Repair stood modestly on Highway 41, a time-worn red brick establishment, devoid of neon lights, featuring only a hand-painted sign above the entrance and tools, gleaming like treasured artifacts. Marcus, at 42, exuded a quiet strength, his broad shoulders straining against a navy work shirt. His close-cropped hair, flecked with grey, framed deep brown eyes that seemed to penetrate both machines and men with equal clarity. From a grease-smeared child tinkering with his father's rusted Chevy to a lead engineer at GM designing engines that roared at Daytona, Marcus had forged his existence through hard work, expertise, and an indomitable spirit. Yet that morning, within the confines of his own establishment, an unfamiliar figure sought to dismantle everything he had built. The silver SUV crept in, its engine sputtering like a breathless soul. The driver emerged from the vehicle, Greg Harlan in his late 50s, with skin tanned from countless hours on the golf course, dressed in a polo shirt as crisp as freshly minted bills, his eyes gleaming with a hint of arrogance. He was a prominent real estate broker hailing from Fairview's affluent neighborhood, where mansions boasted iron gates and lawns shimmered with a vibrant green, reminiscent of emeralds. Greg flung his keys onto the counter, the sound ringing out defiantly. Without a sideways glance at Marcus, he snapped, "The car's having issues, but let me be clear, I don't want any inexperienced hands on it. Bring me your best expert, someone who truly understands high-end machines." The words landed with a powerful impact. The store came to a standstill. Jimmy, the 19-year-old apprentice, let a wrench slip from his grasp, the sharp clang cutting through the gentle melody of the radio's country tune. Denise, a customer awaiting her oil change, halted her scrolling, her gaze lifting with a blend of intrigue and apprehension. Marcus remained motionless, cloth in hand, sensing the sharpness like a blow. Yet his expression remained composed, with only a subtle quiver at his jaw, revealing his inner turmoil. The SUV emitted a whine, a telltale sign of the failing fuel pump, a repair he could execute effortlessly in just 20 minutes. However, Greg's remarks transcended the topic of the car. They were an assault on Marcus's identity, on the years he had dedicated to establishing his worth. "I'm the Ascension, the owner," Marcus declared, his voice low yet sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. "I'll take care of your car," Greg chuckled, the sound sharp and cutting as if Marcus had just cracked a terrible joke. "Proprietor? No offense, my friend, but I require someone with experience, someone who has dealt with vehicles that surpass the value of this entire establishment." He scanned the shop, with its peeling brick walls and oil-stained concrete, as if Marcus's life were merely a smudge of grease. Jimmy's face turned crimson, his fists clenched tightly, poised to unleash a shout. However, Marcus lifted a hand, his eyes conveying a message to hold back. He fixed his gaze on Greg, unwavering. 2 decades in the craft, oversaw the prototype line at GM, crafted race engines for Daytona. "Are you really certain you want someone else?" Greg hesitated for a moment, surprised, yet his confidence remained unshaken. He chuckled softly, a knowing smile playing on his lips as he shook his head. "I admire the effort, but I can't take a chance on a lease. I know someone in Clarksville who specializes in Lexuses and has experience in the major leagues. You've got it." He dwelled on the big leagues, each syllable a sharp jab, as though Marcus had never departed from a small-town garage. Greg glanced over at Denise, who was in the waiting area, seeking a companion in his endeavor. "Surely you'd desire nothing but the finest for a car of this caliber, wouldn't you? One cannot simply allow just anyone to intrude." Denise, a retired schoolteacher, wore a frown, her discomfort evident, yet she remained silent, her gaze fixed on her phone. Greg, interpreting her silence as consent, turned back to Marcus's voice filled with self-satisfaction. "It's not about you, my friend. I simply want to ensure that it is executed correctly." He shrugged, as if he were granting Marcus a kindness by offering an explanation. Marcus held the rag tightly, his knuckles turning pale, yet his voice remained steady. "There are no other mechanics available. I can handle this, or you may choose to seek assistance elsewhere." Greg's laughter echoed once more pronounced, laced with contempt. "It exists in other places. My contact in Clarksville will have this running smoothly in no time." He grabbed his keys, hopped in and sped away, the engine's final sputter taunting them both. The dust swirled through the lot, enveloping Marcus as he remained in the bay. The rag fell to the floor, embodying a sense of defeat. Jimmy erupted the moment Greg left the room. "What's the issue with that person? You're the finest in the county. You ought to have mentioned that you constructed engines that triumphed in races." Marcus shrugged, his voice as unyielding as steel. "Release him." "Jimmy, some people require life to deliver a wake-up call." Yet within, a fire lingered, not fueled by anger but by weariness. Exhausted from constantly having to demonstrate that he was more than just the black mechanic people underestimated, he made his way to Detroit, where white engineers overlooked his designs in meetings until he unveiled a prototype, its powerful engine silencing their skepticism. Fairview was familiar, yet even in this place, gazes like Greg's made him feel like he didn't quite belong. The shop came alive once more, yet the atmosphere felt thick and oppressive. The radio's twang resonated with a sense of sorrow, as wrenches and hammers echoed like a fading heartbeat. Marcus leaned over a weathered Ford F-150, deftly replacing spark plugs with meticulous care. Yet his thoughts drifted to his father, Jeremiah, a night shift janitor who had dedicated countless late hours in their garage, imparting the art of listening to engines. "Machines are incapable of deceit, Marcus," he had remarked. "They reveal the truth in contrast to others." Though a decade had passed since Jeremiah's departure, each wrench Marcus turned seemed to carry the weight of his father's hand, encouraging him to rise with strength, regardless of those who sought to diminish him. His phone vibrated, a message from Lila, his wife, lighting up the screen. "Have you had a chance to eat yet?" "There's a meatloaf sandwich waiting for me in the fridge," he replied. "Thanks, darling, I'll pick it up shortly." Lila was his anchor amidst the chaos, a dedicated nurse at the county hospital who mended his unseen scars with the same skill she used to dress the visible ones. She chuckled at his stories about Greg, saying, "Next time just give him a bill so enormous he can't handle it." Yet Marcus had no desire for vengeance. He desired his creations to be appreciated, free from the constraints of appearance or preconceived notions. Not long after, the tranquility of the shop was disrupted once more. A polished Cadillac Escalade glided into the lot, and from it emerged Phil Whitaker, Greg's friend, a savvy player in the real estate game from the affluent part of town. A hefty figure in a snug grey suit, sporting a smirk that mirrored Greg's right down to the curl. "Heard this place is all right," Phil remarked, but his gaze swept over Marcus, taking in the work shirt, grease and smudges, as if he were evaluating a labourer. Greg remarked, "You're fine, but I'm looking for someone with experience in luxury vehicles. Do you know anyone like that?" The words pierced anew, reopening the morning's wound. Jimmy, wiping down the counter, clutched his rag with a fierce intensity, his eyes aflame. Marcus inhaled deeply, his voice unwavering. "I have experience with all types of vehicles, from Cadillacs to racing prototypes. Share with me what the issue is." Phil arched an eyebrow, clearly skeptical. "Indeed, this creation is my pride and joy, holding a value that surpasses the typical role around here. Get it wrong and I won't be covering the costs." He let out a laugh, not warm, but rather like someone who believed he had the upper hand. Marcus quickly identified the issue: power malfunction. Challenging, yet not harsh. He had it operating flawlessly in just 40 minutes, quicker than any shop in Clarksville could have achieved. Upon Phil's return, he circled the Escalade, revved the engine, and then offered a reluctant nod. "It was decent, but I think I'll return to my regular choice next time." It's wiser to be cautious than to regret later. He flung money onto the counter, offered no words of gratitude and sped away. Jimmy pounded his fist on the workbench. Why do these individuals behave as if you don't matter? You complete that task in no time at all. Marcus just said, "Continue with your efforts, Jimmy. They'll recognize it." Yet in the depths of his mind, he questioned whether they truly would. The hours stretched endlessly, a palpable tension hanging in the air like the remnants of exhaust fumes. Marcus meticulously reconstructed a CA, another strike in a single day. He maintained an even tone. "I hold the senior position here. I've been doing this for 2 decades. Contributed to leading facilities. Would you like me to review it?" Ellen paused, her lips pressed together, then let out a sigh. "All right, just proceed with caution. It's completely fresh." Marcus discovered the problem, a heat shield secured in just 15 minutes. Ellen settled the bill, murmured something indistinct, and departed without a second look. With a surge of frustration, Jimmy delivered a sharp, "Sign to the tire." "This is unacceptable, boss. They all resemble one another." Marcus merely inclined his head, sensing the burden pressed down more heavily. By 4 p.m., the sky darkened, storm clouds gathering ominously like a bruise. Marcus was grappling with a persistent transmission when his phone chimed, a number that remains unidentified. He allowed it to go to voicemail, yet an instinct urged him to take a look. Greg's voice pierced the air, frantic and almost a scream. "Greetings, Marcus. This is Greg Harlan reaching out. My SUV has broken down on 41, perhaps around 10 miles away. It won't start." Silence. "I reached out to Clarksville. My guy is all booked up. No one is on their way. I realize I was difficult this morning, but I really need your help. I'm willing to offer 3 times your asking price." Marcus rested against the workbench, gazing out at the rain-drenched window. A part of him felt inclined to let Greg simmer, to reach out to your Lexus Pro and see how that unfolds in a torrential downpour. Yet, the echoes of his father's words lingered. "Assist them. My boy, not intended for them, for the essence of your being." He seized his toolbox along with a spare fuel pump he had meticulously rebuilt, surpassing factory specifications. "Jimmy, oh, you stand your ground," he shouted. Leaping into his black tow truck, the name Tate's emblazoned, on the side. The desolate expanse of Highway 41 lay before me, bordered by withered cornfields and drooping fences. The wind screamed through the fractured window, carrying the scent of soil and impending storms. Marcus bypassed the radio, allowing his thoughts to swirl and collide, concerning each setback, every skeptic, yet also every triumph. Presenting his design to the executives at GM, witnessing their astonishment when it succeeded, finalizing the lease for this shop despite the bank's skepticism. Greg was not the adversary. He was simply a man in need of guidance, and Marcus was determined to show him the path. The SUV stood before me, its hazard lights blinking faintly, reminiscent of a fragile heartbeat. Greg stood next to it, drenched from the rain, his umbrella turned inside out, hair stuck flat against his head. He appeared shattered, a stark contrast to the confident broker from just hours earlier. He sprinted towards Marcus's truck, his voice raspy. "I'm so relieved you arrived." It simply ceased to function. No alert. I reached out to everyone. No one is truly free. Marcus emerged quietly, lifting the hood as the rain pelted against his face. "The fuel pump is shot," he declared, his tone cutting through the air. "I mentioned it to you earlier today. You failed to pay attention." Greg hesitated, his words faltering. "I didn't mean—" Marcus interrupted, his gaze sharp and unyielding. "You believed I didn't measure up. I listened to you. Take a moment to reflect." Rain hammered down, drenching Marcus completely, yet he operated with relentless precision, tearing out the faulty pump, fitting in the replacement, inspecting the lines, and testing the battery. A pickup came to a halt. "Ray at the feed store. Could you use some assistance, Tate?" "Understood," Marcus exclaimed, water cascading from his cap. Greg observed, trembling, his gaze darting as he came to understand that Marcus was far from an ordinary individual. Thunder rumbled. Rain lashed, yet Marcus stood resolute. He slammed the hood and commanded, "Start it!" Greg rushed inside, twisting the key in the lock. The engine bellowed, powerful and perfect. He emerged, mouth agape, umbrella left behind, divine. How did you accomplish that? It's absolutely flawless. Marcus cleaned his hands, the rain purging the grime away. Completed. Move forward. Greg stumbled, filled with urgency. Hold on. What is the cost? Money? Card? Is there anything at all? Marcus gazed, his eyes resolute. Silence. This morning, you seemed to doubt me. I resolved the issue since you were in a bind, not due to a request. Greg stood still, droplets of rain cascading. Down his face, the umbrella tumbling into a ditch. Marcus continued, his voice soft yet cutting through the silence. I've been repairing vehicles since I was 12, led GM's prototype shop for 6 years, crafting engines for Daytona. Did you seek the finest? You have just laid eyes on him. He simply moved on without expecting an answer. Tools clattered into the truck bed as he sped away, abandoning Greg to the tempest. Shame gathering around him like a puddle of rainwater. Headlights cut through the darkness, Marcus's chest feeling lighter, not in victory but in liberation. He had fulfilled his purpose. In the shop, Jimmy swept the floor, the lights humming overhead. You repaired it at no cost. Marcus gave a slight nod. You're truly remarkable, leader. At home, Lila waited with meatloaf and greens, her eyes sparkling as he shared the story. You showed him, she said, squeezing his hand. He simply wanted him to understand, Marcus replied. Yet, the tale continued beyond that point. Days later, Phil Whitaker arrived once more, this time in a BMW, his demeanor even more abrasive than before. I've heard you took on the role of a good Samaritan for Greg, he scoffed. However, this vehicle is quite luxurious. Mess it up, and it's over. Marcus repaired it with precision and speed, yet Phil merely flung some money aside, grumbling, "It'll do," before walking away. A week later, Greg came back, absent the polo, clad instead in a faded flannel, his eyes weighed down with fatigue. Marcus, I admit I was mistaken. I misjudged you and behaved foolishly. You rescued me, expecting nothing in return, even when I felt I was undeserving. I researched you, GM Daytona, thoroughly. I apologize. I trust you with my business, my family, and my friends. I'm sharing your story with everyone. Marcus gave a slight nod. Feel free to bring your car whenever it suits you. I will ensure it is done correctly. Greg's handshake quivered, yet Marcus held on tightly. The store thrived. Greg's wife's Camry, his friend's Ram, and then unfamiliar faces from Clarksville. Miss Lorraine wove stories of Marcus as if they were ancient legends. Ray gave his back a hearty slap. Repaired that fellow's vehicle amidst a tempest? I imagine he's still blushing. Marcus smiled, remaining silent. He brought on Carla, a mechanic overlooked by others, and supported her when customers were uncertain. Greg persisted, handling oil changes, tires, and even bringing donuts once, putting in a lot of effort. Marcus was indifferent to gratitude. He sought respect, and Fairview offered it gradually, steadily. On a rainy night, Marcus found himself standing in front of Tate's Auto Repair, the water shimmering on the sign. He recalled Greg, Phil, his dad, each time he chose not to brake. Repairing that SUV wasn't about seeking recognition. It was for Marcus Tate, a man beyond the confines of any bias. He drove home, headlights cutting through the darkness, heart calm like a well-tuned machine. If you've ever faced skepticism, been overlooked, or made to feel inferior, remember this. You don't require anyone's approval to let your brilliance radiate. Put in the effort, hold your head high, they'll notice, and they'll always remember. Spread the word, leave your thoughts, and join us for more authentic stories of individuals who stand their ground.